Hey guys, welcome back to episode 198 of 5 Drinks to Midnight, in a show where we bring the questions, guests bring the drinks, we try to wrap up before midnight. Today we're headed back to Travel Bar to meet up with another legend, Herman Mihalich, co-founder and distiller of Mount Laurel Spirits. You know, the guys that make Dad's Hat Pennsylvania Rye. Let's get started. For joining me. 5 drinks at midnight, 5 drinks, 5 questions, midnight, whatever comes first. Thanks so much for joining us at Travel Bar. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing wonderful.
Excellent, excellent. What are we drinking first?
Well, we're going to start off with our biggest seller, and it's a relatively young rye. It's a blend of our small barrel vintages and our older, bigger barrels. We blend them together to get a nice balance, but they're all made with our 80-20 mash bill, which is the old school Pennsylvania style rye whiskey. So this is we call this our classic rye. It's 90 proof, and it's there's nothing in there but our 80% rye grain, which we get from a farm right in Bucks County, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
The farm where we grow our whiskey, where we grow our rye, is the Mies family's been there since 1716.
Okay.
And they do a great job growing really excellent rye for us. They're very meticulous about making sure they harvest the rye berries when they're very ripe, and we get great consistent quality coming off the farm from them.
Awesome.
The other 20% is 15% of it is malted barley, and we use a 2-row Munich style malt, so a very flavorful malt, which helps balance that dry rye spice with some malty fruitiness in the distillate.
Okay.
The remaining 5% is rye malt, which we threw in there just for fun. It gives it a little bit of a kind of a licorice background that you often find with rye malt.
All right.
And the rye malt we use is actually malted in Pennsylvania with the same rye that's grown on the farm.
Okay.
So we have some of our production is made with all Pennsylvania malt, but we've been using malt from Wisconsin for a long time, the past 14 years.
Okay.
And so we're sticking with that primarily because that's the flavor profile that we've come to love.
Okay.
And so it's a relatively young rye, and I think a lot of people enjoy rye a little younger anyway.
Okay.
And when we run our still, we have a pot still with a side column. We do 2 distillations, and when we're making whiskey that's going to be aged a shorter amount of time, we take a different cut off the still. So if we know it's going into 53s that are going to age a minimum, all of our 53s that go into our straight whiskeys are minimum 4 years old.
Okay.
So we'll take a fatter cut, what I call a fatter cut off the still.
Okay.
So it's got a little bit, bigger flavor that when it's young doesn't drink so well, but after 4, 5, 6 years it drinks very well.
Okay.
So but this is the younger version, the younger little brother.
Awesome. Cheers.
Cheers.
That's fucking delicious.
So it's again, we get a lot of pushback from folks who claim always that older is better, but we're not trying to duplicate old whiskey here. We are very careful about the ingredients we use, the fermentation we conduct, a long 5 to 7 day fermentation, low and slow, and we think it draws out a lot of that nice fruitiness from the malt.
Okay.
So we don't get any of the off flavors. We have a temperature controlled fermentation system, and so we get really nice, beautiful flavors off the fermentation.
Yeah, you do.
So this preserves a lot of that early fermentation product.
Okay.
Which are very fruity.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of that comes from the malt we use.
Oh, nice. That's so good. But all right. So question 1 is always an origin story for us.
Sure.
So how'd you get started in the whiskey business?
Great question. Well, I grew up in Western Pennsylvania. I lived in the apartment above the family bar that my grandfather started as a speakeasy in the 20s.
Okay, awesome.
He was working in the local still mill and decided that running a bar would be a lot better than working in the still mill. And so he started the speakeasy, which turned into the family bar.
Okay.
And I grew up in the apartment upstairs.
All right.
Until the bar closed in the late 70s. When the still mill closed, the bar closed.
Okay.
Now, part of that background story is that the the whiskey my grandfather cut his teeth on in the teens, 100 and some years ago, came from the Gibson Distillery, which was located a mile upriver from the mill where he was working. It's right outside of the town where I grew up.
Okay.
Now, obviously, it closed in 1920, but he cut his teeth and developed his taste for whiskey from the Gibson Distillery right there. It was the largest rye whiskey distillery in North America.
Okay, wow.
Yeah, it was a big deal, and so even until the age of 95, he was always a rye whiskey guy.
Okay.
So when he died in the early 80s, unfortunately, the choices had been whittled down to, particularly in Pennsylvania, it was basically old overall.
Yeah.
And so even as a teenager, when he moved in with us, he would say, bring me my medicine, which was 2 fingers of rye.
Okay, I love that.
So he was always, and in those days, in the 70s, his favorite rye, my dad's favorite rye, was a brand called Sam Thompson.
Okay.
And Sam Thompson was a rye that dates back to the 1850s and was made towards the end at the Shenley Distillery out near Pittsburgh. And had been kind of kicked around a few other places, but it was a really, really excellent rye. And then again, when they finally stopped producing, then Old Overall was really the only option. By that time, it was already being made in Kentucky by Jim Beam.
All right.
So anyway, that being said, I went to college, worked had suit and tie job for a long time in the chemical industry, and then there was an article in 2006 in the New York Times. And Eric Asimov, the writer for the Times, invited several people in to taste whatever ryes they could find, because the rye which had been dying for years was starting to show signs of life, mostly driven by bartenders in Brooklyn who were looking for rye to make their cocktails authentic for things like Manhattans, which were originally built on rye whiskey, things like that. Yep. So that was driving a renaissance, and it caught my eye because of my background with my dad, my grandpa, and so it was they sort of predicted this renaissance, and at the time I was working in the corporate world, and so it was kind of a joke with me and some friends, like, hey, let's start a distillery. So, and for those of you who are old enough to remember the old Mickey Rooney movies where they say, hey, let's put on a show.
Listen, are you kids willing to stick together and pull yourselves out of a hole?
You bet.
I've got an idea.
Yeah, it was kind of like that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So we said, okay, we joked about it for a while. And then in 2008, 2009, started getting more serious about it. And so I was in between jobs. And my brother suggested, why don't you write a business plan? So I wrote the business plan. I showed it to my business partner, John Cooper, who I've known since 1976 when I went to college, and a bunch of other guys we went to college with, and they were like, "Hey, let's do this." So, okay, that's fine. So I'm a chemical engineer by training, so I wanted to be sure we did a nice job on developing the process. So at the time, there was a program at Michigan State University called the Artisan Distillery Program.
Yep.
And so we went there. John and I went there and did like a deep dive on distilling. And again, having known a lot about it already, coming from my chemical engineering background, and my dad, my grandpa had a little 5-gallon still.
Okay.
We used to make pear brandy from the pears in the back.
Very nice.
And but Michigan State really helped us hone in on, we did a lot of back studying on the old Pennsylvania recipes, that 80% of grain, 20% malt recipe, which was really a standard way to make rye, sweet mash, no sour mash. And so that plus what we learned from Michigan State, and the still that they had in-house. In fact, the still company, Carl Still from Germany, they're the ones that steered us towards the Michigan State program because they had a partnership with them.
Okay.
And so we went there, did a deep dive on distilling, and then we worked with them for a year going forward, running trials in their distillery with different malts and different distillation conditions and fermentation conditions, different yeasts. And we finally settled on the recipe that's the backbone of what we do today. So that came from our work with Michigan State. So when we started up, we really had a good handle on what we wanted to do. We had a good process already defined. And Carl did a great job. I mean, we love the still we have from them. It's a pot still with a hybrid side column, which gives us a lot of flexibility to run it either as a pure pot still, or we can bring out the column to clean up. Like I told you before, for this whiskey here, we run it, we put it through the side column, and we make sure we clean it up so that as a young whiskey, it still drinks very well.
Yeah, very well.
So we got started, and initially I wasn't going to be the distiller. We were going to hire one of the young men from Michigan State, who at the very end declined to come for various personal reasons. So we had already ordered the equipment and raised the money. So, and I hadn't gotten my new job yet, so I had a new job as the distiller and
Excellent.
and operations guy at the distillery.
That's fucking awesome. I love too that, like you said, that there's just because I mean, there's been many a nights when you're sitting around with your buddies around the
Yeah.
table at the bar and being like, "We should do a distiller. We should do like."
Yeah.
There's a lot of drunk talk about we should do something,
It took
but
us-
you guys actually did it, which is
It took about 3 years to get the courage up.
Yeah.
But we did it, and again, I think we did it in a very professional way. Sometimes John and I, we always say, we're not very flashy marketers, unfortunately, I guess for us. But I'm a chemical engineer. John's a sales professional. He worked again in a suit and tie kind of thing. So we're not as flashy as maybe we need to be, but we've developed a really great group of whiskeys that are well crafted, well thought out, and we put a lot of energy into making sure we make a really good whiskey.
yeah, and you do. So
Thank
like
you.
that. And then I guess just a final follow-up question: where did the name Dad's Hat come from?
Well, I'm wearing one of my dad's hats.
Yep.
So my dad unfortunately passed rather young, and because I'm afflicted with
Yep.
a lack of hair, I started wearing these hats because the job I had previously, I was traveling a lot, doing tribute to Europe, and it rains a lot in Europe, and having a fedora with somebody who wears glasses and keeping the rain off your glasses and from going down the back of your coat,
Yep.
having a hat was handy, and so I started wearing them a lot.
Okay.
And I have a whole collection of the ones he had. And
That's awesome.
This is an old Dobbs, New York, and this I have a photograph, believe it or not, of my dad wearing this hat at JFK's funeral.
Okay.
That's
Wow.
how long this hat's been around.
Wow.
So I have most of his hats he bought in the 60s and 70s. I do have one he bought later on in the late 80s. And many of the others are Stetsons. And until 1969, Stetsons were made in Philly.
Okay.
A lot of people don't know that, but so Stetsons. So this is not a Stetson. This is a Dobbs, but it's one of the older ones, and I just happened to pick this one off the rack today. So, and technically, this is not a fedora. This is called a trilby.
Okay.
It's got a slightly smaller brim, and it serves its purpose.
It suits it. Very nice.
So when we started the brand, we just picked a name for the
Okay.
company, Mountain Laurel Spirits. Mountain Laurel is the state flower of Pennsylvania.
Okay.
So we just picked it out of the air. Then we went to work with a company in Philadelphia called Signature Communications, who helped us with our branding.
Okay.
And they noticed the hat. They then said that kind of keys to the backstory a bit with my dad and my grandpa.
Yeah.
But what they also said, and which is I think in the long run more important, is that a fedora hat communicates a certain nostalgia that we wanted to associate with the brand.
Right.
Because when we started in 2011, there was nobody making whiskey in Pennsylvania since the 80s. So we were bringing back a style of whiskey that had really disappeared. So it was a way to communicate the nostalgia we wanted to associate with the brand. And and the fedora does it in a rather universal way, because maybe it reminds you of an uncle that you like,
Right.
or maybe you like Humphrey Bogart movies,
Yeah.
or maybe you like Mad Men. So there's all these cultural and personal references in your brain that get stirred up by that image,
Yeah.
and that's the marketing guys.
All right.
That's kind of what they brought to the table.
Awesome. Well, there we go. That's an awesome origin story. So, an amazing whiskey
Sorry,
to start it out. But yeah, cheers.
I finished mine already.
Right here.
I'm a little greedy.
Question 2, drink 2. What are we drinking?
We are drinking our straight whiskey. So this is all minimum 4 years old. The barrels average between 4 and 6 years old.
Okay.
And same mash bill, 80% grain, 20% malt. But it's all 53-gallon barrels, minimum 4 years. And one thing, we do the same thing for our classic rye, but I'll describe it now because I think it's a very useful discussion to have, is as a small producer, and we're working with some big distributors sometimes, and bartenders who want to know that they're going to get a product that's consistent over time. So the way we do that for our classic rye in fact, all three of these, we have, in these two, we have 6,000 liter tanks that we keep roughly half full.
Okay.
So we bottle, whiskey comes out, but then we always put we put fresh barrels back in, And we select those barrels based on, if we see the flavor profile drifting one way or the other, we'll pick barrels that we think complement what's in there.
Okay.
But those barrels are also blending with what was there before. So it's kind of like a vatting process.
All right.
It's not really Solera, but it's...
As I was going to say, it sounds like almost like
it's almost like a Solera, but it's a way to provide a stability in the flavor profile that our big distributors and customers would look for. We don't want them to buy a bottle this month, and at least for these three expressions, we don't want them to buy a bottle this month and then next month buy another bottle and go, what was that?
Yeah, right.
It doesn't taste like last month at all. So that's how we keep that stability. So here, that is every barrel in that tank is a minimum of 4 years old.
Okay.
And they range between 4 and 6 years old.
Okay. Wow.
So this is kind of our. It's a little bit of a problem child. It's a great whiskey. I'm not sure if we need to work on the pricing or how we market it, but it's a really delicious whiskey.
It's got a beautiful nose.
So here you're going to get a lot more of the barrel.
Yep.
And so the barrel effect on the younger whiskey is really just caramel, the caramelized sugars. Here you start to get more extraction of the coconut and the vanilla and all those kind of things, which take a bit longer to come out of the wood. And of course it roughs off. The edges are kind of roughed off. This is a little brighter.
Yep.
So that's a little more rounded. But it just drinks really well. Plus, if you're making a whiskey forward cocktail, like I recommend having it, where it just
the coconut in here just is really nice. Oh, that's gorgeous. I like that. I like that a lot. It drinks really well. That is. All right. Well, so question 2.
Yep.
Pre-prohibition, Pennsylvania had massive amounts of distilleries, like
approximately 200.
Yeah. And do you feel that not only are you guys responsible with bringing back Pennsylvania rye, but also it's more of a cultural movement that you're trying to restore?
To a certain degree. I mean, the fact that Pennsylvania was such a cornerstone, keystone of the whiskey business for a long time was it's part of the revival we're trying to create, and we're also trying to work it into sort of the infrastructure in the state as well. I mentioned before the farm we work with, and bringing that agricultural aspect back to the table.
Yeah.
And so now this is all the other rye whiskey distilleries in Pennsylvania who are making whiskey in Pennsylvania. They're buying grain from local farms. So these are. It develops that whole infrastructure of supply and interaction with the local communities.
That's awesome.
And one of the things that Pennsylvania has done very well, and a lot of people like to criticize Pennsylvania because of our state store system. However, for limited distilleries, they've created a licensing that gives us a fair amount of flexibility. In addition to having a tasting room at the distillery, we're allowed to open 5 satellite tasting rooms.
Okay.
And in those tasting rooms, we're allowed to, obviously, at the bottle shops, we can sell bottles of our whiskey. We can sell our whiskey by the glass. We can sell cocktails made with our whiskey as long as we use ingredients that are from Pennsylvania.
Okay.
We can serve any other alcohol made in Pennsylvania by the glass or by the serving. So we have a tasting room. It's about the size of this place, and it's so if someone comes in with their best friend, a whiskey lover, and they're not a big whiskey person, they can say, okay, can I get a gin martini? Yes, Blue Coat Gin, which is made in Philadelphia, absolutely allowed to be used.
Awesome.
So, or someone says, hey, how about a beer? Pennsylvania makes great beers.
Yeah.
So we can offer a really tasty beer. Obviously, we feature cocktails and we feature our own products, of course, but it gives us the flexibility to have a place that everybody can be welcome. We have great ciders. There's a cidery in Bucks County near where I live called Manhouse. They make amazing dry ciders. So we have a great portfolio of things to offer, and obviously with the flagship of our own brand,
right,
and cocktails made with it.
That's awesome. And then, so do you have 5 satellite?
No, unfortunately, we only have 1.
Okay.
I mean, having grown up in a bar, I know the challenges of doing that kind of thing. And we have a new guy on our team, Len Boris, who's a really excellent front of the house guy, and we've been investigating options to do more. I'd love to be able to open a visitor center and tasting room at the farm, and we're working on that as well.
Okay.
That would be fantastic.
That'd be awesome.
It's a beautiful location. It's on top of the hill. They've been there since 1716. It's just wonderful part of northern Bucks County. So that's part of what's happening in Pennsylvania, is that, bringing people back to understanding not only of the whiskey itself, but the backstory of how it's made, the history, all those aspects. And we're working with the Pennsylvania Distillers Guild to develop to work on our communication and branding to the rest of the world.
All right, awesome. I know you mentioned the state store system. I love it because it's every time I go to Pennsylvania, there's always really great prices stuff.
They used to be really bad.
Yeah.
When I was a teenager, living at home, and the bar was still open, I would go with my father to the state stores to buy the supplies. Well, in those days, it was a counter. There was nothing on display.
All right.
So you walked in the door, there was a counter and a couple of guys who, probably didn't want to see you, and they had a book, and you looked up the book, and you had to pick out what you wanted, and you had to give them a code number. You couldn't tell them, give me a bottle of Jack Daniels.
Yeah.
You had to say, give me code number 07414, and they would go get it, and you'd bring it out, and then you'd pack it up and you'd leave. So there was nothing on display.
Gotcha.
That was until the 70s the case. So that was the bad old days.
All right.
Now today, like there are fine wine, good spirit stores in Pennsylvania. They do a very nice job. Like you said, I'm kind of a wine snob too. I lived in France for 5 years, and I like good wines. Pennsylvania state stores, they have good buying power, and you can go there, and they have a whole section they call the Chairman's Selection. You get some really nice wines there at a very nice price. So I'm not going to bash them, and plus they're my biggest customers. So.
Right. Yeah. Don't piss them off.
No. We've always had good people to work with there.
With that cultural movement, like we talked about, do you feel like you're carrying the torch, if you will, or are you lighting the fire, kind of?
Well, I think we lit the fire a few years ago now,
Right.
And there are many other really nice distillers in Pennsylvania. So I think we're all kind of carrying the torch.
Okay.
We've got there's another distillery out in Western Pennsylvania called Liberty Pole. We think does a great job. We just did a collaboration
Nice.
barrel with them, and so we're it's really, the fire's been lit. I mean, we've been doing this now for 14 years,
Right.
and I think now it's a question of how do we continue, particularly in the current environment in the alcohol business is a little rough.
Right.
So it's finding the ways to, as I said, with the guild, to market ourselves better, to get the word out, and we've had some great cooperation with the Pennsylvania Visitors Bureaus and the various ones located across the state, and encouraging, getting their help to help communicate our stories, to get more people coming to visit the distilleries. We do tours on Saturdays, or most Saturdays, and a lot of the other distilleries, they rely very heavily on their foot traffic coming in. The new rules I mentioned before did not exist when we first started.
Okay.
So we started with more of a distribution-oriented model. So we're in roughly 15, 16 states. But some of the other distilleries have built their business plan really on being in a high volume place where a lot of people can, tourism, or even just in a town center where people are, can stop in and buy their products.
Nice. Well, there we go. Question 2 done.
Done. Cheers. And I saved a little bit for you.
There we go. Question 3, drink 3. What are we drinking?
We're drinking a very unique barrel finished whiskey.
All right.
To my knowledge, right now this is the only whiskey in the world finished in sweet vermouth barrels.
Okay.
So we have sweet vermouth barrels from an excellent vermouth producer in California at Quaddy Wineries. The name of their vermouth is Vaya Vermouth.
Okay.
It's excellent.
All right.
By far, it stands up to any vermouth you can get anywhere. And early on, we, John and I had a habit when we were a little less busy in the very beginning. We would, they were tearing down a building next door, and so for sport, we would sit on the outside the distillery and pour ourselves a Manhattan and maybe light up a cigar and watch them tear down the building.
Okay.
It was kind of entertainment. And so one day I was at a liquor store in New Jersey talking to the Dickie Phillips was his name. He was a famous store for a while, and for a long while. And he said, "Hey, have you tried this California vermouth? Do you think you'll like it?" So I took it down, and John and I made Manhattans with it. We were like, "Wow, that's very good." And John had already had the idea of doing a port barrel finish,
Okay.
which was quite common
Yep.
in all whiskeys. And So it turned out that the winery, Quality Wineries, makes a port style wine as well. And because they can't call it port, they call it starboard.
Okay.
So somehow the light bulb went off, and we're like, hey, why don't we do, in addition to the port, which we also do, why don't we see if we can get these vermouth, because what they do is before they bottle the vermouth, they rest it in these, they're neutral barrels.
Okay.
But they're very well concentrated with the vermouth that's been in there. So we obviously age the whiskey in new oak first. Then we put it anywhere between, we say on the bottle minimum 3 months, but it's usually between 6 months and a year.
Okay.
In the finishing barrels. And so this is, again, to my knowledge, the only whiskey in the world finished in sweet vermouth barrels.
Oh, wow.
And as we do with our barrel finishes, we want to tread lightly on the finish.
Okay.
We want to be whiskey first, then finish. Now, what's interesting about this is that on the nose you're going to get sort of the like baking spices and the orange peel, but then when you the palate, mid palate is that rye spice jumps up, and at the very end you get sort of that vermouth, botanical, herbal finish.
Okay. Oh, that's nice.
It's very unique.
That
And
is.
it's delicious.
That is real nice. Yeah, I'm liking that. That is.
See, I mean, and a lot of people have a bad opinion of vermouth because the vermouth that they're used to using is like a bottle of Martini Rossi.
Yeah.
It's been sitting on the shelf since the Nixon administration.
Right, and not in the fridge either.
Not in the fridge.
Yeah.
So they start with a mediocre quality, and then it gets worse and worse.
Yeah.
So like, via vermouth you can't buy everywhere. It's mostly West Coast. But I mean, spend a few extra dollars and get a good Coquille or something like that in vermouth. It makes a huge difference. So vermouth is a lot of people get a bad opinion of it because of their experience. But I think that this proves, and there are excellent bits out there.
Yeah.
For sure. And the folks at Quality Wineries make their products are delicious across the board.
Yeah.
And the Via vermouth is fantastic.
Well, you just put a cherry in this, and we got our Manhattan. So that is absolutely amazing.
Yeah, my personal preference is I put this over a big cube, and then I'll twist an orange zest on it, and then I'm done.
Oh, very nice. Are you, not question 3, but are you kind of is a Manhattan kind of your go-to cocktail?
It comes and goes.
Right.
I mean, particularly in the wintertime, the whiskey forward ones will in old fashions, of course. That's an easy one. I love a good old fashioned. Now, I didn't bring this with me because we don't really sell it outside the distillery. We work with the apple orchard and cidery out in the Bucks County Manoffs, and they asked us to distill some of their cider into brandy that they use to make something called pommeau.
Okay.
Okay, pommeau is it's a mixture of sweet cider and brandy.
Okay.
So we said, okay, I'll do that, but you have to let me keep some of the brandy. So we have some apple brandy.
Oh, right.
That we've aged. It's delicious. We don't have a lot.
Right.
But I fell in love with a cocktail. One of the traditional cocktails for brandy, apple brandy, is a Jack Rose.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
Now, I stumbled up on the internet onto a recipe that I forgive me for not remembering the bartender's name, who developed this a drink called the Union Jack Rose, and it's so instead of being grenadine, apple brandy, and lemon juice, a Union Jack Rose is apple brandy, gin, lime juice, and grenadine.
Okay.
And it is absolutely delicious. So this summer has been dominated
By that. All right.
That's my sitting on the back deck with in the sunshine is a Union Jack Rose.
All right.
And I love whiskey sours.
Yeah.
Kind of the more traditional ones.
Egg white, no egg white.
When I have time, I'll do it.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I won't push it away.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's just faster not to do it.
Yeah.
But always freshly squeezed lemon juice for sure.
Yeah.
Now, I also have the luxury of, in our tasting room on Mill Street in the little town Bristol where we are, which is it's a nice little town. It actually predates Philadelphia. I mean, William Penn landed in Bristol.
Okay.
So it's been there a long time. And we have right on the main street there, Mill Street, we have one of our tasting room satellites. Like I said, it's about this size. And Len Boris, who's he's our marketing guy, but also he's a very good hand with developing cocktails. And some of the cocktails there are mind-blowingly good. I mean, just so good. He's done some really nice fat wash things and all just really delicious stuff. And so sometimes I'll, if I know they're going to be open, I might just swing. Sometimes I just swing by there and sample one of those cocktails too. I don't have to make myself.
Very nice.
So yeah, I'm good at the basics, but I'm not too good at the things that we have. Very talented bartenders, and Len develops some really nice cocktails.
So, question: how do you keep that word craft relevant when everybody else is throwing that around?
Well, one thing that I mentioned to you before is when we're running the still, and we're running it for our younger whiskeys or for our older whiskeys, that's a hands-on process.
Yes.
So either me or our distiller Travis, we're sampling what's coming off the still, making decisions on how to make those cuts on the fly, because it's not plug and play. Particularly with our still, the cooling water in our condenser comes from the local water supply.
Okay.
And in the wintertime, it's really cold. In the summertime, not as cold. So you can't just say plug and play and run it. You have to, because the amount of cooling power coming into the condenser changes.
Right.
So and there's slight changes depending on the time of year and the rye, on the fermentation products, and we've been with some guidance from a few people in the industry, pushing the envelope on how we select our cuts. So that's evolved over time. So we don't just have a process. We plug it, we press a button, and it goes.
Right.
We keep pushing the envelope, we keep playing with the distillation conditions, because we can play with. We have our side column has plates we can open and close. We can vary the amount of water going to the condenser.
Okay.
And we can vary the amount of steam going to the still itself to vary the rate of evaporation from the still itself. So we play with those different parameters. And we keep finding new things and discovering new things. So I think that's part of the craft. Is not just saying, oh, we found something good, press a button and go home.
Yeah.
So we're always trying to find out how we can make it better, how we can make it more interesting. And I forgot to bring some of it today, but we make the white spirit that comes off the still. We've developed when we take those cuts, we have a really clean cut that we put into in our white rye bottle that is being used in cocktail bars around up and down the East Coast. Here in New York, Death & Company had it on the cocktail menu 2 times in a row.
Nice.
Not currently, but in the past 2 times. And that's kind of like being blessed by the Pope.
Yeah. If Death & Co. Yeah.
So we've honed our ability to run the still and understand how to manipulate that so that we can make a really tasty white, where we can put the stuff that goes into our younger whiskey has that fruity balance that we like in our younger whiskey. We've learned how to dial those things in, so it's not just plug and play.
All right, awesome. How much do you think community plays into that idea of success for you guys?
It helps. We have a great supporting, particularly with our tasting room in Bristol. We have regulars there that, when Len he hasn't done them in a couple of months, but he does a Sunday afternoon cocktail classes.
Okay.
And as soon as he posts those things, they sell it like that.
Nice.
Because even people who've been there several times, they know Len's going to do different cocktails, and Len he was trained in a culinary environment, so he'll make something, kind of not a big deal, but he'll make something really, really tasty to go with it, to match it with the cocktails. So we get that local support. And also, we mentioned this before, it may not be as local, but at the state of Pennsylvania with the state system, and they've always they told me when I went to see them in 2009, I said, look, we want to bring rye whiskey back to Pennsylvania, and they're like, great. I said, would you consider buying it? They said, absolutely. And they said, but if your whiskey sucks, we won't buy it. Right? I'm like, that's fair.
Fair, yeah.
But no one else is going to buy it either.
Right.
So yeah, okay, I get it. But if we make and look, John and I have been nominated for James Beard Awards.
Yep.
We won Craft Whiskey of the Year from Whiskey Advocate Magazine. We were Craft Whiskey Distillery of the Year from Whiskey Magazine in London, globally. And so we continue to get great reviews for our whiskey. So, we've delivered on our message. We've delivered on our promise. And so the state of Pennsylvania said, okay, and they carry our products. And they when they can, they help us promote them. Now they understand where their bread's buttered because they can't ignore the Jim Beams and the panels of the world.
Yeah.
We understand that. Yeah. But that also means that they don't have to they don't have to throw us out of the bath.
Right.
They can give us enough attention and support. I mean, like I was actually surprised last month. I went into my local fine wine and good spirits store to buy something, and I saw we were on an end cap display, and I was like shocked. I was like, wow, I didn't know we were going to. They did it on their own.
Okay.
So we get. I would say we get pretty good support from them, and again, people in Pennsylvania like to bash the PLCB, but sometimes in some states the grass isn't always greener.
Yeah.
So I think they do a great job for us, and so that's more than just little local. That's Pennsylvania local.
Yeah.
And we get great support from the Visit Bucks County. I was just at a conference yesterday. There's the Delaware River Basin water. It's a whole water-oriented organization, and so they had me come to a seminar to talk about how water is important to what we do. And oh, by the way, that's a whole other subject.
Right.
You said it's okay to ramble a little bit?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay. So Pennsylvania, because when you go to Kentucky, they'll tell you the whole story about the limestone water.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? Pennsylvania is sitting on the same limestone formations that you find in Tennessee and Kentucky. In fact, where I live, and right between me and where the distillery is along the Delaware River, there are limestone quarries on either side of the river.
Okay.
So the Pennsylvania limestone, and oh, by the way, for anyone out there who's a fly fisherman, Pennsylvania has an outstanding reputation for their trout and their fly fishing because of their limestone, as we used to say in Western Pennsylvania, limestone creeks.
Yeah.
Okay? So Pennsylvania, so the water quality near us is really, really excellent. The hardness level is great, and so it's both for fermentation because the yeast need those minerals, and also for blending, we have a really high quality water to blend for our final products. So so I was invited to this conference to talk about how important water is, and that's part of our communication we're going to be doing with the guild is to let people know that Tennessee and Kentucky do not have a monopoly on really high quality limestone water. We've got the same phenomenon in Pennsylvania, and that really does contribute to the quality of our whiskey.
All right, awesome. And then I guess just our last follow-up. Let's just say 10 years from now, what kind of story do you want people like picking up your bottle in the future? I guess what kind of legacy are you looking to leave behind?
I don't know. I mean, the fact that we played a very important role in bringing back a style of whiskey that was basically dead, because there was nobody making Pennsylvania style whiskey when we started, and so the 80% grain, 20% malt, sweet mash, and the other dimension to the Pennsylvania style is that we traditionally use heated or temperature controlled warehouses. We don't have open rickhouses like the other Kentucky.
Okay.
And that dates back to the 1800s.
All right.
So there was a great article in a magazine that I dug up online. It was from the 1890s. It was called the West Coast Wine and Spirits Journal. It was an industry thing, and they had a reporter went to the old West Overton Old Overhaul Distillery, and they remarked on that. It was like, wow, their warehouses are temperature-controlled, heated warehouses, so they maintain a temperature all year round. So that's what we do. We're in an old textile mill, and our our aging is based on that history of have temperature-controlled aging warehouse.
Okay.
So so bringing back that style to Pennsylvania and celebrating that style, I think is really the kind of the legacy that I can leave.
That's awesome. Well, there we go. Question 3. Cheers. Question 4, drink 4. What are we drinking?
We are drinking our 6-year-old bottled and bond. Now, I mentioned before for the previous 3, our objective there is to maintain a consistency of style. Not necessarily static, evolving over time, but not variable all the time. So, we continue to look to improve, but we don't want to be radical changes up and down. Now, what we do with our bottled and bond is different. Every year, we look for barrels that we think are distinctive.
Okay.
So it might be, different enough from what we normally put in the tank that we can notice it and it stands out to us. And since 2019, we've been choosing almost every year a selection of barrels that we think are unique and distinctive. We pull them aside and we pick those as our bottle and bond selection of that year. So starting in 2019, we had a bunch of barrels that we filled in the 2013, 14, I think it was 13, 14, I can't remember which. But that was when we were still using some rye grain from Lancaster County.
Okay.
And the Lancaster County farmers sometimes would bring us rye that was a little less ripe than maybe it should have been.
Okay.
So when that whiskey came off the still, believe it or not, it smelled like jalapeno peppers.
Oh, wow.
Now, that sounds like fun, but it's also, for us, was like, whoa, we're not sure, like, but okay. So we put it on the side, and we put some in some barrels and let it sit. Some of it we sold more recently. We had people on the tour wanted to taste it, and they tasted it and they loved it. So we put out a limited edition early, before COVID. It was we called it our Sombrero edition.
Okay.
And it was, we launched it on Cinco de Mayo.
All right.
And it had that jalapeno sort of thing to it, okay? So then we put these other barrels aside, and we kind of forgot about them. And then in 2019, we opened them up, and that jalapeno green had transformed into a cherry red.
Oh, wow.
So very spicy, but cherry red sweet.
Okay.
The fat cherry.
Yeah.
So that was the first one. 2020 was next. We bought a bunch of barrels that we call them pretty. They were very floral, very pretty.
Okay.
21 was Black Forest cake.
Oh.
Cherries and chocolate. 22 was a walk through my Nana's apple orchard.
Okay.
So it was apples on the ground in October.
All right.
And that was fun because we actually there was a whiskey club at the Red Stag, which is a whiskey bar and bar up in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. And they have a whiskey club there. So they loaded up a bus and they brought 20 people down to help us pick out these barrels. So we all agreed. It had that ripe apples on the ground. And my mother's side of the family had a farm out in central Pennsylvania, and I remember going there as a kid. And in this time of year, you'd go out and the apples that were falling on the ground had that really kind of pungent apples.
Okay.
So that was 2022. 2023, we didn't find what we felt were distinctive enough to put out a 23. And this is 24. We're picking 25 as we speak.
Yeah.
We haven't settled on what we're going to do, but this is 2024. These are all barrels from 2018, and the distinctive character we found with these is this may not play to the New York crowd, but in the Philadelphia area we have a snack cake called the Tasty Cakes.
Okay.
And one of the Tasty Cakes is called a butterscotch crimpet.
Okay.
And it's one of my favorites, and so we're calling this butterscotch crimpets on steroids.
All right. I'm excited.
So this is really good whiskey. I mean, this is on my bar right now at home. I mean, they're all on my bar, of course, but this is the one that right now, if I'm doing a single pour, sort of that kind of this is where.
All right.
This is where I go. So butterscotch crimpets on steroids.
That nose. Oh, that's real nice.
And if you're a little older, maybe you might think of Werther's.
Oh yeah.
So.
Oh, that's glorious.
And we're running out of these, but we still have a little bit left. But we'll be finished picking up the 25s in the next several weeks.
Okay.
We're screening the barrels right now, so it takes time. You can't sample too many barrels in one day, So you get what's called happy tongue. And after like so many, everything tastes great.
Yeah.
So we try to avoid that.
Awesome.
So that's our bottle and bond. 6 years old.
That is.
And we did a little label fun here because this label, I don't know if you get a good shot of it, but this is, I mentioned before, the Gibson Distillery.
Yeah.
This is a kind of a throwback to their color scheme and how their label looked.
Nice.
Back in the 1917, 18, 19 era. Someone brought me a bottle. Actually, a friend of mine from college, called me and said they found a bottle in her friend's grandmother's apartment. They were cleaning out, and it was a pint bottle from the Gibson Distillery.
Oh no shit! Wow.
Yeah, and it was great. I said, well, I'll buy it. She goes, no, you can take it. So I was sure. So it was that label color scheme, and so in 2018 when that was distilled, the day that was distilled, my grandfather was working in the wire mill a mile downriver. So that was pretty cool.
Wow.
Now it's almost all gone because I don't I don't save my whiskeys; we drink them.
Right. As you didn't make them to look at them, did
No,
you?
no,
Like
I
this.
have a lot. If I took the value of the empties on my shelf, one thing I failed to mention about the 2006 article in the New York Times, my wife, who is amazing, bought me all the bottles that were in the article
Okay.
for Christmas.
Oh wow.
And in that article was the famous Red Hook Rye.
Okay.
If you know what that was.
Yep.
And which are now selling for crazy amounts
Yeah,
of money.
yeah.
Well, mine's empty. So,
Oh. Right.
so there you go.
Excellent.
I'm
Yeah.
happy to share. That's the fun of what part of what we do in this business.
Yeah, exactly.
It's sharing,
Yeah.
sharing what you make and having, and talking about it and having some fun.
Absolutely. All right. So then, question 4.
Yeah.
With Rye kind of seeing the resurgence and the comeback, where do you think, or where do you see that going, and how does Stats Hat fit into that?
Well, I think that, one of the things that we're quietly encouraged about is that, because we're small, and even as a group, we're still pretty small in the grand scheme of things, as a group of Pennsylvania distillers, getting the word out and getting through the between the communications world these days, as you know, is very fragmented.
Yeah.
Between podcasts and it's you can't just go to Whiskey Advocate because nobody there's not the same amount of people are reading Whiskey Advocate.
Yeah.
So you can't just go there, and they've given us accolades all the time, but it's just not as widely circulated as it used to be. So it's much more diverse. So getting the word out about what we're doing is tough. Now, one of the things that I'm encouraged about is I mentioned before the brand Old Overhaul.
Yep.
Old Overhaul was started in Pennsylvania by the Overholzer family in 1810, and it's now made in Kentucky by Jim Beam. And Jim Beam, the old Overhaul brand, they've incorporated corn into it, so it's not quite the same thing as it was.
Yep.
Now, last year, they debuted a new product called A Overhaul,
Yep.
where they're embracing their Pennsylvania roots. So they've changed the mash bill, they got rid of the corn. It's 80-20, just like ours, the old school Pennsylvania style. And they even have a keystone embossed on the bottle. They talk about Monongahela mash, all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So some of the distillers in Pennsylvania were like, hey, they shouldn't do that. Me, I'm thrilled. Because if Jim Beam, with the kind of marketing and sales and communications budget they have,
Right.
if they can educate the world that Pennsylvania rye used to be a thing, and this is what it is, we just think that's great.
Yeah.
So we're hoping that has a really positive effect, kind of an umbrella effect for everybody that will help develop everyone's knowledge of Pennsylvania rye, why it's different than what they're drinking from MGP in Indiana or the Kentucky ryes that normally contain corn. So we're hopeful that as we continue to make the push, and I mentioned before with the guild trying to get ourselves organized so that we can communicate more effectively about Pennsylvania products in general, but Pennsylvania rye specifically.
Right. Yeah, rising tide raises all ships, right?
Absolutely.
Like that's the
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And if you ever get a chance at Western Pennsylvania, there's a museum at the old West Overton location, so you can stop in there. It's worth a visit.
And two, aren't they redoing the distillery of the old Overhaul to start production again?
They have a small still.
Yeah.
No, they're not going into the really old production, but the West Overton Museum has a small still, demonstration still. And Jim Beam, to their credit, has put a lot of money into the main building where there's now 3 floors of displays, displaying the history. There's a guy on the board there, Sam Komlenik, who is probably knows more about rye whiskey than anyone else in the world, Pennsylvania rye in particular. He's on the board there, and he's contributed his own personal collection. And they've outfitted the top floor with tons of information. It's really a cool visit.
That's awesome.
It's a cool visit.
And then I guess just our last follow-up on that. Do you see this evolution of rye becoming more about innovation or preserving a tradition?
In our case, it's more preservation of the tradition.
Okay.
That being said, we do barrel finishes and things like that.
Yeah.
They're a little fun. John and I are, we always say, unfortunately, we're probably not the most whimsical folks around. We're trying to do more of that kind of stuff. We're doing some bottled cocktails and things we do at the distillery or at the tasting room. But we don't have the bandwidth to be able to do too much innovation.
Okay.
Trying to do too much can diffuse what you're doing, particularly for some of the smalls we are.
Right.
So, and frankly, we're unique enough that we don't, I think the innovation is the fact that we're using the old school, the OG style,
Yeah.
the 80-20 style, and that in of itself is already unique. Duplicated by Jim Beam now, or brought back by Jim Beam with the overhaul brand, and some of the other distilleries in Pennsylvania, and so that in itself is, I think, what we need to do to provide enough light on what we're doing.
Right. Perfect. Well, there we go. Question 4.
Question 4.
Jeez.
Done.
Question 5, drink 5. Last drink of the night. What are we drinking?
Oh, this is something that's not available anymore.
Okay.
This is one of my own personal bottles that I
Ooh.
brought up here for everyone to share. It's a 11-year-old single barrel, 130 proof, and it's got quite a kick to it, but it's absolutely unique. Because it's 11-year-old Pennsylvania Rye Whiskey, and I don't think that exists elsewhere at all.
Oh, okay.
So it's a single barrel. We dressed it up. We gave it a top hat instead of a fedora.
Very nice. Because it's
And,
fancy.
And it's 130 proof, so it does have quite a
A kick to her. Oh, yeah, nose though.
Yeah, this has got that kind of a bit of an old timey, a bit dusty
Okay.
smell to it, but if you like old whiskeys,
Oh, wow.
it opens up. The finish is amazing.
Wow. That is crazy.
It doesn't come across as 130 until it hits the back of your throat.
Yeah.
And then it opens up big time.
Hot damn. Okay. Wow.
Yep.
All right. Well, okay.
Okay, question 5.
As we get used to that one. So, question 5 comes down to the flip the whiskey Wednesday coin. You can flip it, you can spin it, you can do whatever you want. One side says fuck yeah, one side says fuck no. You don't have to answer. The coin will give us the answer. But if you feel so inclined to answer, please feel free to do so.
Okay.
But, question 5. Do you feel that patience is the distiller's best friend?
Patience. So I'm supposed to spin this?
Yeah. And if that's fuck yeah.
That was it. That was
Yeah. So right there we have fuck yeah.
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 Best friend? I will disagree.
Okay. So you got a busted coin.
What's that?
You got a busted coin.
I got a busted coin. No, I mean, look, yeah, because one of the things that I've been talking to folks about this earlier today is that we always get this thing about, when are you going to come out with older whiskey? When are you going to come out with older whiskey? Well, first of all, I don't think rye drinks that much older. We have a couple of exceptional bottles here. That's the exception,
Yeah.
not the rule. The 4 to 6 year old time frame for me is really optimal for rye
Okay.
because part of what makes rye for me appealing is that kind of bright spiciness. And waiting too long, the barrel kind of rounds it off a little too much. So I think for me, we spend a lot of energy and attention focusing on getting what goes into the barrel to its best.
Okay.
I mean, there's a couple of people, and I've had this discussion with people, they say, oh, don't worry, it's the barrel does a lot of work. Yeah, it does a lot of work, but we strive to put the best we can into the barrel to start with. And that's why I think our young whiskeys are so tasty, is because we take a lot of care on the raw materials we use. We use 2-row barley, we don't use 6-row barley. We use the rye grain we get from the best source. We have the yeast selection we have is a yeast that's been around for a long time, and it was helped the guys at Michigan State help us select it. We do a low and slow temperature controlled fermentation. We're hands-on on the still. So all those elements make up what goes into the barrel to start with.
That's
So
awesome.
for me, that's the patience comes later.
Sure.
But for me, I wouldn't overweight that.
Okay.
Just waiting for the barrel to do all the work. That doesn't sing for me.
Okay. Awesome. Well, there we go.
There we go.
5 questions answered, 5 drinks down. Thank you, sir, so much for joining us. I really appreciate
It
your
was fun.
time.
It really was a pleasure.
And thank you for joining me at Travel Bar. I really appreciate your time, and this has been amazing. So I hope we can do drink together again soon. So cheers.
You're invited anytime.
Excellent. I will be, now that I know you're an hour and a half away.
Hour and a half away,
Yeah.
not too bad.